Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, and what we're doing today is figuring out our quadratic equation kind of in a full circle, and this is our second example. And so what we do, like we did last time, is we start by figuring out a, b, and c. Our a value, I wrote it here, is 1, and our b value is 16. Our c was 63. And remembering that our c in our quadratic equation, when it is in standard form, our c value is always going to be the y-intercept. Forgot to mention that on the last video. And so the first thing you want to do is start with the axis of symmetry. Now, quick sketch what I've done before is our axis of symmetry is that invisible line that goes down the middle of our graph, and it kind of shows the splitting of equal parts of our parabola. And so what we're going to do is figure that out, and in order to do so, we take the opposite of b and we divide that by 2 times a. So in our problem, we have the opposite of b, which is a negative 16, and I divide that by 2 times a, which is 2. So I have negative 16 divided by 2, which is going to give me a negative 8. Remember, I can write that as an ordered pair, and my ordered pair will look like negative 8, comma 0. Now I can take that information and I'm going to plug that to find the vertex. But before I do, if I look at our axis of symmetry equation, that opposite b divided by 2 times a, that is part of, it's like the beginning of our quadratic equation, the opposite of b divided by 2 times a. The other part of our quadratic equation we use to find what's called a discriminant. And I'll show you to do that right after we do the vertex. So we're going to take our x value that we just found a moment ago, which was negative 8, and we plug that into our equation. And we're going to solve. Please use the calculator. I by no means expect you to be able to do all of this in your head. If you can, you're amazing. Let me just let you know. But I'm going to use a calculator for part of it. So I have 8 to the second power, which gives me a 64. And then I have 16 times the negative 8, which gives me a negative 128. And then we're adding that to 63. So I take that and I'm going to type all of it into the calculator. And I get a negative 1. So my vertex in here is going to be negative 8, negative 1. Now what we're going to do, on a quick side note, is write the vertex form, because if I have the vertex, I can write it in vertex form. So that's going to be y equals a, which was 1, times x minus 8. But because it's a minus, when I put it in vertex form, it's going to become a plus 8. Remember, we take this like writing it backwards, or the negative, a negative times the negative will make that a positive 8. And then we minus 1 here on the outside because our y value is 1. So this over here is vertex form. Pardon my handwriting today. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do is find the zeros, and again, there's more than one way to do so, so I'll show you both ways. So from here, we're going to do the opposite of b, which again, we have that information from up here. So it's a negative 16, all divided by, like I had up here, 2. And what I'm going to do off to the side is find the discriminant, and the discriminant is going to let me know whether I have 1, 2, or 0 solutions. And when I do that, I'm going to do the opposite of b, just kind of in a side box. I'm going to do b to the second power, so 16 to the second power, and then times 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 63. And again, feel free to type that into a calculator. I know that it is not the easiest to try to do all of that in your head. So once I multiply that all out, what we wind up with is 4 times 1 times 63. And that gives me 256. And then we're going to subtract that. Oh, wait. I did that part wrong. 16 to the second power is 256. And 256 minus 252 gives me 4. 4 is a perfect square. That works out awesomely. And because 4 is a perfect square, we're going to take that square root and just split it up right away. So I have negative 16 plus 4 divided by 2, and negative 16 minus 4 divided by 2, and we're going to solve both of those. This in here was my discriminant. And so when I solve this, I have 16 minus 4, which gives me a negative 12, divided by 2, which is negative 6. So x equals negative 6. And I have 16 minus 4, which is going to give me a negative 20 divided by 2. And that should give me, why do I feel like I'm having a wrong answer here? Because I didn't take that properly. We all make mistakes. That's why it's good sometimes to just double check your work and make sure that we're doing things correctly. So I have negative 16 plus 2, which gives me 14. And 14 divided by 2 is where I get a negative 7. And then over here I have 16 minus 2, which gives me a negative 18. And negative 18 divided by 2 gives me a negative 9. And so those are my zeros, or my solutions. This is where my graph is going to cross over the x-axis. Now, what can I do with that information? We can take that and we can find the factors from it. Remember, to find the factors, I make both of these equal to 0. So from here, these are the zeros, or solutions. If I make this equal to 0, I would add 7 to both sides. So plus 7 plus 7. So I would wind up with x plus 7 equals 0. And then I would add 9 and add 9. So I would have x plus 9 equals 0. Leaving me with my two factors of x plus 7 and x plus 9. What else could I have done with that information? Well, if I started at my equation way back at the top, and let's say, for example, I wanted to complete the square to solve it, we would do x squared I would start up here and we would do b, which is 16, and then I would do half of b, which is 8, and then we would do half of b to the second power, which is 64. That's what we have here. So now I'm using the information I have up here. Remember, for vertex form should look like a times b minus h to the second, and then plus k. But when we're completing the squares, it's going to look like this in the end. So I have my a from up here, 1. And then x, we get that from here. And here we took half of this, which would be a positive 8. And then because I had 63 up here, I'm going to subtract 64 from it. Because when I have this squared out, I still have to account for that 64 that I'm adding to the problem. So I'm going to subtract it out, and that gives me a negative 1, which is the same thing I have up here. So this, again, is vertex form, or completing the square, because we had 63 and I subtracted 64 from it. Now the last thing that I want to do is take my vertex form, and if I decided to multiply that out, how did that go back to standard form? So if I have 1 and I multiply that by x times 8, this is to the second power, so I'm going to have that one more time. X plus 8, and then minus 1. We're going to multiply this out, and I will have x times x plus 8, and then positive 8 times x plus 8. we're going to multiply. So that leaves me with an x to the second plus 8x plus 8x plus 64 minus 1. We're going to combine our like terms, which will give me x squared plus 16x and then plus 63. This is the exact same equation that I had when I started it. So if I have an equation that's written in vertex form or that I've completed the square, I can always multiply it back out to confirm that I have the same answer that I started with. The only other thing that I want to do with this is if I took this and factored it, and the more of these you do, the faster you'll get at it. I'm looking for a times c, positive 63, and a positive 16. I multiply that out and I get 1 and 63. Again, from here, the sign here is positive, so that means these need the same sign and they're going to match whatever I have here. So this is plus plus. 2 does not go into 63. 3 does, and it's 3 and 21. 4 does not. 5 does not. 6 does, and is 6. Wait. 6 does not. Just kidding. 7 does, and it's 7 times 9. Why do I keep trying to put 6 in there? Because of the 6 and that 6. But there's no 6. Okay. So I have 9 and 7. 8 does not go into 63, but 9 does, and 9 is already there. When I add them together, I get 64, 24, and 16. So this is my lucky couple. They multiply and give me 63. They add and give me 16. This is the add side. This is the multiply side. And so we divide that by the a we had all the way back at the top of our problem, way up there. And remember, the denominator goes in the front. The numerator stays in the back. And my two factors are going to look like x plus 7 and x plus 9. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That's the exact same thing that we did a second ago when we found the zeros from using a quadratic equation. So you can literally go in a complete circle, and no matter what part of the problem they give you, you should be able to go back through and figure out any other part of our problem. And so just showing you one last swoop of the entire process, and feel free to pause if you need to catch any piece of it. Okay, thank you so much.